Hello, 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 hello. Hi. I am excited for today. I'm excited for today. We are going to be having a different kind of conversation. Welcome. All right. So I'm getting myself all set up here. Today's what, a Tuesday? Yes, Tuesday. So establishing consistency. So um moving forward, every Tuesday I'll be going live. The goal is to start at 6, but just to give myself extra time, for those who know me know that I have a difficulty with being on time consistently. So I decided to start at 6:15 today, but the goal moving forward is to consistently start at 6 o'clock. The what we're going to be talking about today is going to be a little bit different, but within the context of our culture. Diaspora wise from the continent, and it's going to be a mix of the this podcast, my show will be a mix of um, politics, culture, and issues that are trending and that are important to the community. So, seeing that we have a new movie that is going to be released September 16th, and there has been some bit of a buzz around this new movie, I really felt like I needed to have a conversation about it, and see how we can explore or discuss the reactions that I've observed, right? And I'm not quite sure if most of you have observed these reactions, but they're parts of our community where the response to the movie is not quite um, welcoming. So I felt like I needed to have a conversation about it, and I'm excited to have everyone join me. And as always, feel free to comment, feel free to give me feedback, and if you have any questions or comments, I would be, definitely, I'm happy to answer the questions and have a discussion on what your concerns are, questions are. So the topic we're talking about is the trailer Warrior King, which was made public or released last week. And I, like everyone else, well, most of us, I'm still extremely excited about this movie, and in full anticipation as to what it's gonna be about and look like. However, my excitement has been kind of dampened because I've come to realize that not everyone feels the same way. So we're going to talk about why, right? Why some of us are not exactly excited and thrilled about this new movie. Um, so I'm going to, and I see folks are checking in now. Just jump in a little bit into what is the movie's about, right? So the movie is called Woman King, and Viola Davis is a one of the leading actresses in the movie, and based on what we've seen so far, it is about the role of the Dahomey warriors. And so I'm going to go into a little bit about who the Dahomey warriors were. And everything I say and everything we talk about is in full recognition and acknowledgement that this is not a made up story. This is actually a true story of the Dahomey people, who are located in what is now called Benin, right? So I have to say that because some of the responses, the feedback I've been getting, or I've been reading, I feel that some people seem to think that it's just this made up story, that really puts black women in a empowered role and position, right? And that's the context of the conversation today. It's the significance of the title. Now, I am not really, because we have not seen the movie, And because the movie is yet to be released on September 16th, I really can't talk about it, right? So this is not about the movie. It's about the reactions to the title Woman King. What does that mean? And how certain segments of our community really, really not happy about it. And what's the reason for that? What's the reason for that? Now, before I go into the topic, as you can tell, I'm a little bit dressed up today. I usually just wear t-shirts and and have my head wrapped, but I'm a little dressed up today because I just got some new pieces in from Africa, some pieces that I just had made. So I'm showcasing it. I'm a little excited. So I just giving you a little bit of a taste of some of the new one of the new pieces that I just had arrived from the continent. Um, so let's talk a little bit about Dahomey warriors, about Woman King. Now, where do I start? I think, some of us have heard of the Dahomey warriors, right? They were acknowledged, they were featured, not directly in the Black Panther movie, right? And as a result of the anticipated release of the movie, a lot of us are doing research of who the Dahomey warriors were and getting some information on the history of these, I would say, phenomenal women, right? I see this as a very, very important aspect of African history, our history, people of African descent, because it is an element of who we are that is not taught or discussed or even known, right? And why I say element of who we are, because even as unique as the Dahomey warriors were, right? And please keep in mind the words that I'm using to describe them, because I see a lot on the media, on descriptions of the movie. They're called Amazon warriors, and I find it very disturbing, right? Because they have their own name. Either Dahomey warriors because they're from the Dahomey people of the Dahomey people, or the Mino tribe. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I choose intentionally not to call them the Amazon warriors because that's a name that's been applied to them that was used to describe what most scholars would say a fictional story of a more Eurocentric European warrior women who were in existence at some time. And so for quite some time, some most scholars would say that they're fictional. So I think using the name Amazon warriors to describe, the Home Amazon, I think they use, even just using the word, I think is troublesome. So I intentionally choose not to use that term to describe them. Now, what I see that a lot of people, and I'm gonna say men, right? I've noticed that a lot of men have some concern, particularly regarding the trailer and what that means. Um, and I feel as though there is a misunderstanding or a belief that the Dahomey warriors were they were unique but not uncommon. I really want to talk about the fact that African women were very much held in high regard within societies and still do to this day, where they're trusted in holding certain titles and playing essential roles in the establishment of kingdoms, right? We understand that there were or still are matriarchies or patrilineal societies, matriarchal societies, where the lineage, right? The lineage or the queendom is only held by women and not by men. And I feel as though this is so important because, this shows that African men, I'm not quite sure, to what degree we can extend that to today, modern day society, to the 21st century. But I know in more the historical era that African men clearly, this assumption I'm making, if anyone disagrees with me, please share, please let me know, that African men clearly had to have some degree of comfort in their masculinity, right? Some degree of comfort in their identity as men and awareness of their position within society and the titles they hold and their responsibilities. To be comfortable with the fact that you have a part of your military, right? A large section of female warriors, right? To be a part of a queendom that is led by an African woman, by a queen. Um, and so I am making that assumption, right? That there was that level of comfortability. And so, in thinking of that and looking at how some people are responding to just the trailer, we haven't seen the movies yet, so we can't make assumptions. But how we're responding to the movie, I think it shows a lot, right? It's a huge um, red flag for me, and it really speaks volume to how some our men, right, feel in regards to um, the elevated positions of Black women. And are those concerns valid, right? Are those concerns based on the realities of, our relationships in our communities, of the elevated um, positions that Black women are having in societies, right? What does that mean in regards to, our reality, 21st century, modern day reality, given our history? So, I see my friend Victoria. Hi, Victoria. I feel you. This is why intersecting Western culture with Pan African values largely does not yield strong family centered Black communities in the US. Exactly, exactly, right? Thank you. That's a really good comment. Um, there has to be at some point a clash between the Western value system, the Western interpretation of a family, the Western culture when it comes to the role of a woman, right? And or a more Afrocentric value system, or she uses the term Pan African value system, uh, keeping in mind um, the history our of our realities, the history of our presence in the Western world. And I'm excited about this movie, not because of what it is going to show, but I'm excited and grateful for this movie, even though it's just the trailer we've seen so far, that is triggering a conversation, right? As of now, it's, a particular group of men voicing their uncomfortability in seeing Black women in that position, right? But I'm truly grateful because it gives us an understanding of true history is not a fabricated fictional storyline, right? And then it's going to push us to have the conversation of our roles as Black men and women within our families, within our households, within our community, and within the larger society. So, that's one reason why I'm really grateful for Viola Davis making this movie. Now we're in saying that this is not a unique situation, right? The Home Warriors, this is not unique. The concept of Black women, African women, diaspora women leading in military efforts is common, right? throughout African history and in the diaspora and in the Caribbean. And so I'm going to just list a few. I know Victoria know who they are. We had an organization where she started an organization at ASU, and it was called one was called Nzinga. So I always appreciate that, Victoria. So I want to list or just go through some names quickly of women, queens, African women who were very instrumental in fighting against the European colonizers, right? So we have Queen Amina Renas. Now she did not. She fought against the Roman Emperor Augustus, who conquered neighboring Egypt in 30 BC. She ruled the kingdom of Kush. For those of us who are familiar with or Eastern, is that East Africa, right? Northeast African history, right? Egyptian history, Kush, Sudan, that area, right? So Queen Amirinas, she ruled the kingdom of Kush from 40 BC to 10 BC, right? In the Nubian region, which is now called modern day Sudan. And so when Roman Emperor Augustus conquered neighboring Egypt with plans to invade Kush, she launched a surprise attack on the Romans. Like this is, history that, we can find and do research on, right? So she led an army of 30,000 from the front lines and successfully captured three Roman ruled cities, right? And so she is remembered throughout the Nile Valley and beyond as a Nubian queen who conquered the Romans. So we use the word Nubian queen, right? And with without many of us to the realization of what that really means, right? Um, and the impact and the significance of that term. Then we have like another example I mentioned, Queen Nzinga Ambande, right? She ruled from circa 1583 to 1663, right? She was known as a politician, skilled military strategist, right? She was ruler of the Bundu people, in which is now called Angola. So she's remembered as a negotiator, formed strategic alliance with Portugal in 1622 to face off attacks from rivaling African aggressors. And this is really something that is important because one of the concerns, or not the concerns, the comments that people made were, well, why are we, talking about them and making, a movie about the Amazon, sorry, I'm saying Amazon warriors, sorry, about the Dahomey warriors, right? When they were part or played a role in the slave trade. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's kind of what the society, many other tribes were doing, many other groups were doing. So Queen Nzinga Mbande, she was facing attacks from rival African aggressors, looking to capture people for the slave trade. And she made a pact with the Portuguese. Now we can say, we can recognize that that was not ideal, right? Which led to many of us being in the diaspora. But her pact allowed her to fight enemy tribes to enslave for the Portuguese. And in exchange, she got weapons. And so these weapons helped her to stave off, attacks from other groups or African groups. But she is significant because through her leadership, she successfully held off Portuguese forces, for example, for many decades. She led her troops into battle even until into her 60s, despite multiple attempts by the Portuguese to capture her. They never succeeded. They never succeeded. And so she died peacefully in her 80s after defending her people from colonial rule, right? So that is a second example of an African woman in a very much elevated position, significant position within her society that was able to rule, dominate, and fight against aggressors, right? But this is not just in Africa, right? In the Caribbean, the West Indies, where I'm from, right? Queen Nani, she's well known in the West Indies, specifically in from Jamaica between 1685 1750 to 1750. She was a leader of the Jamaican Maroons. Now, I don't know how many of you have been to Jamaica, have heard of the Maroon communities, but these are communities in Jamaica of ex slaves or Africans who were able to escape slavery or fight their way to freedom and form communities in the jungle in spaces far away from, the where the British could not have access to them, right? So Nani, as a child, she was kidnapped from Ghana, enslaved in Jamaica. She escaped, joining other formerly enslaved people who sought refuge in the island's Blue Mountain region, right? So by 1770, due to her exceptional leadership and military skills, she became the head of the Maroon settlement, um, and began to train her people in guerrilla warfare and was able to lead them in dozens of successful battles and freeing over 800 enslaved people, right? So we know about of Harriet Tubman, right? We know about Harriet Tubman. She's another example right here from the United States and her role in the Underground Railroad in leading a lot of enslaved Africans to the north, to freedom, to Canada, right? And so we also have that story in Jamaica, and that's of Queen Nanny, right? And because the British were not able to overpower them, right? They were forced to sign a peace treaty with the Maroons, guaranteeing their freedom. And those communities are still in existence up until today. So for those of you, if you've never been to Jamaica, that's definitely a community that you should explore. But until then, do some research on them. And I think I'll mention one other person, Ya Asantewa. Yeah, Santiwa, this is going to be the last person I'm going to mention. I'm doing so again because I really want to stress that the Home warriors are not unique. They're unique in how powerful they became, how um, how successful they were in growing their kingdom, but how brutal they were. They were, and we'll talk about that some more. But there are other examples. And Yaa Santiwa is queen of the Ashanti Empire, right? Which is now modern day Ghana. And as queen, she was the official protector of the empire's most sacred object, the golden stool. And sorry, okay, sorry, I just got a message, right? And this stool was made of gold, and she believed to house, which believed to house the soul of the nation. The stool represented the royal divine throne of the empire, and when British empires invaded and demanded possession of the sacred object. So she was able to, for many, many years, fight off the British Empire, and her bravery and her resistance is well known and recognized up to today. So I had to read those because I again reinforcing the fact that there are examples of black women, not black, yeah, black women, African women, um, having the ability, to have these significant positions and titles and playing these roles in protecting their kingdom. And so I know this flies in the face of Western ideology when it comes to the position of women, right? I believe comes a lot from Christianity, or from religion, not only Christianity, I'll take that back, right? Of what is the place of the woman within the larger society. Um, and how can we, as a community, right, who has been through what we've been through, right, with slavery and colonization, right, and have had our cultural identity and the the established understanding of the gender roles in our societies challenged and changed. How do we find that balance, right, as women and as men? I think it's an important conversation we need to have, particularly at this time. I'm not going to go into too much about the Home warriors. There's a lot of information out there, particularly on YouTube. I give a lot of credit to the Home team. That is a YouTube channel that has been talking about over the years the mentioning about the Home warriors and the role they played in growing their kingdom and being a representation for their king. So these are for female warriors who led African empires and armies, right? Long before the European colonization of Africa, right? They were part of many ancient kingdoms who thrived for centuries on the continent. So even though Black women have been at the forefront of these impressive exploits in combat, their stories are overlooked. They are. And I see, this movie as an example of us highlighting and making mention of the contribution of Black women or African women in these stories, right? Which leads to freedom from colonial colonization, colonial occupation. Um, One significant or one group of people who is not mentioned that much, and that is Ethiopia. Ethiopia, the Ethiopian women played significant role. I'm thinking, right, but Ethiopian women played significant role against the fight against the invasion of the Italians, right? Against the invasion of Mussolini's army, right? This is well known. The significance of the women who marched alongside men to battle at at Adwa. It's called the Battle of Adwa, right? So these women played a significant role to fight against the Italian army that was, humiliated, right? They were humiliated by the Ethiopian powers. So the victory was decisive. It was quick, and it was even more important because it was mostly led by women, or the women played such a significant role. This is significant because many of them felt as though they had to help in protecting their families, right? The war, and so they did what they can in picking up firearm, right? And joining the men, the Ethiopian men, in fighting them. And of course, as what the Ethiopians or the Europeans tend to do, right? They describe them as being masculine and over aggressive and strong, just to masculinize them. But they did their job, and they were led by a queen, by Empress of Ethiopia Tetu, right? She is known as playing a significant role in leading the Ethiopian military and leading groups of women in fighting against Mussolini's army in the 1800s and 1900s. So that's just another example. And so in saying that, um, so I had to give a little bit of historical, reference, right, to other examples. How do we connect that to what's happening today? You can go online, you can go on YouTube, and you'll see a few videos of men really sharing that they're not happy with the title of the movie. And I granted, I in a way agree. Let me know if you guys agree also. Woman King. I'm not quite sure what they meant by that word term, Woman King. Were they trying to say, yeah, I'm not quite sure what they meant by the title Woman King. So I do acknowledge that they could have found another title for the movie. They could have found another title for the movie, but the essence of what it is, right, showing Women fighting and being aggressive and playing the role of a military aggressor and being so successful. What does that mean in the identity of the black woman, and importantly the identity of the black male, right? Can we as a community acknowledge, in face of a more Eurocentric, I believe is Eurocentric, exa- um, interpretation of the role of the woman, right? Being very much in a domicile space. I don't like the word subservient, but subservient, and leave space for leadership and being at the forefront to be primarily that of a masculine role, the male role, right? I take example of what's been done in the past, right? These societies were able to do both. The women were still able to play their role within the community as women, like the Ethiopians, based on the research that I've done, right? They left their families because they were fighting alongside the men, because they had to play a part, everybody, in fighting against a common enemy, right? But they were still very much, I am seen and recognized as the women they are, as the mothers that they are, right? The Empress Tatu, right? She was still seen as an empress, but she was very much respected for her ability to be strategic, and is helping the emperor in defense against Mussolini, in Mussolini's army. So how can we balance both identities, right? How can we as Black women still um, have our roles within a larger society, have leadership positions, right? Have accomplishments out in the professional world, out in the professional field, but still be seen as feminine, still be seen as women, right? How can we do both? Um, I see. Thank you for that. Pharaoh's title is titled and held by both men and women. Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Thank you, Victoria. Right. So how do we do that? And do black men, right, do their concerns and do the black man's frustration and response to the movie or the trailer, right? Do Are their responses valid, right? You know, the fact that there's so many men who feel as though they're being emasculated, the fact that there's so many men who feel as though this is a further attack on their masculinity, right? And their position within society, within our communities, within their home. The fact that so many of them feel this way, is this something that we dismiss, right? Which I don't think we have the luxury to do so. Or do we acknowledge that? Because it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that you know the visible, the visual example of black women on the battlefield fighting against the a common enemy and being successful doing so in some way is a further example of emasculating men, right? Why would the black man feel that way? What is it that is happening within our communities? What is it that's happening within our societies, that in our society um, that leads for a large portion of men feeling that way, right? Um, I'll think about. I'll give my own. I'll give an example, right? But before I give my example, is it something that the society is pushing, that black men, that makes black men feel this way? Is there something that we as black women are doing? Are their concerns valid? Right? Is this something that we as black women are doing that does not that contributes to that feeling of emasculation, or something that we as black women are doing that takes away um, from them feeling, as though they are a male, the men that they should be held in regards to. And so I ask these questions because I feel as though it's important for us to have these conversations, because part of our community are sharing frustrated thoughts, and loud comments, and as a result, if we need to have build wholesome communities, we can only do so if we acknowledge the frustrations, right? um, so I'll give an example. So I've had conversations with men personally where, they feel as though, that they are not, they're in within a society that it really does not help them to be the man that they should be, right? But they also feel as though women, because we're taking on so much of that aggressive masculine role, that aggressive masculine energy, because we're being put into leadership roles, leadership positions, we're being elevated in society, that it takes away from them being in that space. Can that happen collectively? Can that happen at the same time? Victoria is saying it counteracts the black male renaissance. Unfortunately, black empowerment historically has been male centered and Eurocentric in framework. I agree. I agree. I agree. Eurocentric in framework. That's why, I had to give examples of all these other female warriors, queens, empresses who were already at that established positions and held those titles, right? And so, I have my in my notes somewhere that, the concept of gender equity, right? The are born out of the result of feminism, right? Why was there a need for that? There's a need for that because they're part of the Western community culture that felt that women needed to fight for gender equity. But we had examples of that already, on the continent. Clearly, we have examples of that. So where does, the modern, belief system of the women having much more, background role, and the position of leadership be relegated only to the men? Where does that come from? Where does that come from? Right? And so we are battling, fighting against a, as you said, a Eurocentric framework, right? That really is, should I say, foreign to us, right? There's a scholar that I read about when preparing for this said that, the concept of, gender equity and, women's roles really came about with European, presence on the continent and through Christianity, and sharing what, that the women should be much more, behind the scenes, relegated to certain positions, while, certain titles should be established primarily for the men. So now because we're within that mindset, there's a battle that's going on, right? There's a fight that's going on where one side feels as though what they thought is their masculine identity is being taken away from them, right? It's being taken away from them, and so we as women, um, what do we do with that? What do we do with that? Because in looking at the comments, I am disheartened. I'm sad because black women we're being blamed because of our elevated positions that we're receiving, right? Instead of it being seen as, let's elevate together, right? Let's find a way to pull each other up. Let's find a way to find positions for each other within this space that we're in. It is being structured as well. Look at the black woman. This is another example of, making us feel less than. Here's another example, um, of 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 emasculating us. But I must say, in reality, what roles are we really playing, though, right? Are their questions valid or invalid? And this is where my personal experience come into play. For those who know me, I can be one. I do have strong personality, right? I do have strong personality in the professional world, in the business world. If you've had interactions with me, I am very much can be, outspoken. If I have an opinion, right, I can be very opinionated. And with my conversations with people I've been in relationships with, I have learned and I'm learning, right, that when I'm out in public spaces, when I'm out in business world, that I can have that strong um, masculine energy with me, but know when to step back, right? Know that when I'm back at my house, know how to adjust to that, feminine position so that he can still be the man that he wants to be or needs to be. And I give an example, a story of an incident. I call it an incident of an incident that happened. My girlfriend of mine, she's probably watching this. Not gonna call names, not gonna say anything. Someone who I hold dearly. We were out in at a nightclub, um, and she met a gentleman. They had a really good conversation, right? They had a really good connection, and they were vibing. And so, I was doing my own thing, minding my own business, and I realized that she disappeared. She left for a bit, and then she returned. And so we were talking about the evening. She was telling me about the guy, and they made a really good connection. And they were just having a conversation, away from the crowd, at the nightclub. And then she said, yeah. So after the conversation, she walked him to the car because he had to leave early. Um, and I was like, you did what? She's like, yeah, I you know, he had to leave, and so I walked him to his car. Mind you, this is probably like 1 o'clock in the morning, um, nightclub scene, right? We live in Phoenix, Arizona, where there's always cops around. And she, comfortably walked another gentleman that she just met to the car. Um, and I'm like, why did you walk him to the car? She's like, he was leaving, and I thought I'd walk him to the car. I'm like, one, why would he allow you to do that? And two, who walked you back to the club, to the night spot? No, she's like, nobody. So I was like, okay, so you walked a male to the car. He jumped his car's left, and you walked yourself back. Um, and so I had to explain to her that maybe you should have let him walk himself to the car, because as a male, as a man, you want to make sure that the woman, the girl, the female, is safe in a safe space in an environment. And so, how was he going to make sure that she was safely back in the space with her other friends if he drives off and she's walking back in the dark night by herself, right? So I had to tell her, maybe just, next time, um, we basically we have to help each other in understanding what our masculine male roles can be and what our female roles can be. Thank you, Philo. Or he could have driven her back. He did not. He did not. Philo, you know the person. He did not. She walked back to the spot by herself, and I'm still blown away to this day by this. Still blown away. And so I think because of our history, because we've so disconnected from our culture and understanding of being a man, being a male, leadership, example, protecting, and because of, as a woman, as a female, not understanding our our feminine side, right? Not understanding, allowing the man to lead, and which I told her, no, you should have let him, say you goodbye by the gate where the security guard is at, and let him walk by himself, right? Or as Philo said, have him give you a drive back to the spot. Um, and so I've seen very, very strange examples of these dynamics where even, you know, a lot of us in our individual spaces, in our smaller groups, not really understanding our responsibilities and our role. Um, and so I'm still bothered to this day about that. And there are other examples. Don't need to get into that. And so in reading comments in response to this trailer leaves me to wonder, how is it that as a community we can have conversations about the role of the black man, right? Um, what does masculinity for the black man looks like, right? What does the role of the black woman looks like, right? What does femininity of the black woman looks like? Um, and when do we step back and allow the man to lead? And when do we step forward and take on that leadership role? And I feel as though because we live in such in a Western culture, in a Western environment where we receive much of our understanding of how to navigate society and our worlds, right? We live in a Western culture that feeds us. Western culture that feeds us how we interact with each other, how we get um, uh, learn and deal with each other, that we've lost that connection and understanding of how we should interact with each other. And Victoria said it's heartbreaking. It can be a celebration of representation. It can't be a celebration of representation. What can be a celebration of the movie? Are you saying the movie can be a celebration? Yes. Now I understand. Yeah, it cannot. It cannot. We cannot celebrate that this is a representation of our communities, if I'm interpreting your comment correctly, right? It would have been amazing to say, yes, the film. It would have been amazing to say that we are the community where both genders understand their role, and in the face of a common enemy, we know how to come together cohesively, right? Understanding our roles and working together against our common enemy. It doesn't even have to be a common enemy. Working together to build a community, working together to establish our families, to establish communities and institutions, right? This should have been a perfect example of a true reflection of who we are, right? But instead, it's the opposite, right? It's for me, it's the opposite of reflecting what we are not. It is highlighting what we are not, and most importantly, what we need to work towards. And so I'm really, really hoping that we continue, we have conversations, because right now we're not having conversations. I'm seeing men venting their frustrations in their own spaces. For those who are frustrated by the film, not all men, mind you, it's not all men. There's a certain group who are venting their frustrations, and instead have these conversations together. Right? We have black institutions, we have black organizations, we have churches. Churches, what are you guys talking about? Seriously, I haven't been to a church in years, but whomever goes to church, please let me know what you guys talk about, because there's a lot that needs to be talked about in our community that's not happening. And there's a lot that's being said on the internet. There's a lot being said in social media that really, 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 really highlights um, a lot of frustrations that's being felt within our community, and I think we need to start having conversations. So I continue to anticipate the film. I continue to look forward to what it's going to be about, and I'm really, really glad that it is forcing us to learn more about our history, learn more about the role of women in African societies, but really look deeper within ourselves, within our communities, and talk about what it really means for us in rebuilding and building, what it really means for us in coming together, and in the continuation of establishing families, communities, and working together collectively, right, for whatever problems we have as a unit. So, thank you. Thank you, Victoria and Philo, for your comments. Thank you. I think I've said enough for today, but I just wanted to share my thoughts in response to the trailer, mind you, not the film. We haven't seen the film, but just the trailer, because a lot of people seem to, not a lot of people, there's some men who seem to have jumped to their own conclusions as to what they think the film is about, and have basically said they're not looking at it. They're not supporting a film that has a leading role where the women are playing such a dynamic um, position, a role within the film. So there's a large group of men who've already stated that. So my comment, ladies, those of you who have partners, male friends, ask them, really, really ask them, how do you feel? How do you feel about this trailer? What do you anticipate? And let's talk about it, right? How do you feel about, is it a reflection of your masculinity? Do you feel emasculated by this film, this trailer? Do you feel emasculated, and like, do you feel your masculinity is being threatened, generally, right? And what is it as I, the individual, can do? What is it my fellow female counterparts can do? What is it can we do collectively, in removing the feel of the emasculation. And don't forget, much of it is being perpetuated by a structure and a system that we don't control. So it breaks my heart that the black women are really the target for this. But we do live in a society where much of our um, the ills of our community is outside of our control, and it's being created by um, a larger, what should I say, system, right? A larger system. Um, so I'll end there for today. Thank you, everyone who signed in, joined in. I encourage you to have these conversations within your spaces, your intimate spaces, within your communities, within the institutions, within the churches you're part of, because we're all part of a larger community, but we're clearly not hearing and understanding each other. And I hope that just this trailer alone is one step in that direction. All right. So I'm going to sign off for today, sign off for now. I appreciate you signing in and watching. And I'll see you till the next time, next week. Until then, bye. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye.